Up next on The Bottom Line, a safe haven for citizens seeking help for addiction. The county breaks ground on an important new project.
That addiction is a public health issue. It should not be a criminal justice issue.
Breaking the cycle, Montgomery County provides support to those victims of domestic abuse.
I also hear from women all the time who I talk with about what their options are, because there are options.
And a story of survival. We'll introduce you to a county resident who shares his experience with the Holocaust so that others never forget.
After the first generation of survivors, namely us, are gone, there is no direct contact. Now, I would like to hope that our next generation will pick up on that so it's not forgotten.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Susan Kennedy. The opioid epidemic has devastated families across the state of Maryland and right here in Montgomery County. But thanks to funding from the county and the state of Maryland, there's reason to be optimistic as officials broke ground on the new Avery Road Treatment Center. Here in Montgomery County, Avery Road Treatment Center has been instrumental in helping thousands of residents overcome addiction. And by 2020, more people seeking treatment will be able to use their services thanks to the county and the state of Maryland.
And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to the groundbreaking for the brand new Avery Road Treatment Center.
We want to do everything in our power to help restore hope and to put those in need on a path toward healing and recovery. Once complete, this Avery Road Treatment Center will provide the tailored treatment options, the safe haven, and the second chance that so many of our citizens desperately need.
The new 37,000 square foot facility will replace the existing building that is more than 27 years old.
You can see there's still blue tarp up there to keep the water out. This building could not come soon enough for all of us.
The new Avery Road Center will provide 64 beds for substance abuse treatment and also a one-stop shop recovery campus.
This new facility will send a signal, a very strong signal, that addiction is a public health issue. It should not be a criminal justice issue.
Though opioid overdose deaths are down, the increase in the use of synthetic fentanyl has posed a new challenge.
And it's no place in Maryland or in Montgomery County that is exempt.
Officials stress this new facility will be prepared to meet the community's needs through its ability to address addiction issues of all kinds.
And it's not just addiction to heroin, it's also cocaine, it's amphetamines, it's meth and alcohol. Alcohol is still very, very prevalent with us.
The cost of the new facility is approximately $15 million, and it's expected to be complete in early 2020. As Domestic Violence Awareness Month comes to an end, discussion about domestic abuse and its repercussions should not. Here in Montgomery County, there are resources that are free to residents who are victims of domestic violence. Officials here are committed to putting an end to this deadly cycle.
I'm doing a job for the courts. The judge deemed it necessary to sign these orders.
Javier here? Yeah. Coming this way?
Every day of the week, Montgomery County Sheriff's deputies are working to prevent domestic violence.
Somebody thought that he was a threat to himself or others. So with those allegations, that could stem into a domestic violence issue. If he's supposed to be on medication, he could easily turn on a family member or anything like that, and it could turn into a domestic related situation real quick.
Here in Montgomery County, in any given year, there are more than 5,000 911 calls relating to domestic abuse. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office is the lead agency for serving domestic violence petitions and peace orders.
Yeah, anytime that you're involved in these sort of domestic situations, it is inherently dangerous with law enforcement.
Domestic violence is a public health issue. It's estimated that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 10 men experience victimization by an intimate partner. Not only does domestic violence cause physical harm, it also can advance mental health issues, homelessness.
Have you ever experienced domestic violence?
and can even result in death.
We're here for you. We support you. We believe you. And here are your options. Here's what we can do for you. Here are the different steps forward that you can take. Because when you've been controlled and manipulated for so long, part of that healing process is deciding your own path forward. And that's why we're here, to help those who need it and to educate those who know someone.
Someone like Cheryl Kravitz. Today, she lives a normal life here in Montgomery County, but that hasn't always been the case. In the 1970s, she married a man who would make her life a living nightmare.
He started by pushing, by verbal abuse, to just say, oh, it's just a one-time thing, it'll pass, but it doesn't pass. What happens with abusers, they're very, very smart, and it turned out that, he would beat me from the neck down, so I was totally black and blue from the neck down, but my face wasn't touched.
She began to ascend in her career, which made things even more difficult at home.
Well, for him, this was untenable because I was getting praise from outside sources that he wasn't getting at all. So the higher I got, within the city, the lower his self-esteem became. A couple of times, sometimes in the middle of the night, after he had passed out, I would drive myself to the Red Cross and just go in my office and just sit there and cry. But I never thought about telling anybody. I was too embarrassed.
Each year, approximately 3,000 victims of domestic violence come to the Montgomery County courts seeking protection.
I think judges need a lot more education on domestic violence. A judge recently told a victim, I think you're lying because you didn't tell me that he threatened to kill you. If I were a victim, I would remember that. Well, she wrote it down. She was more concerned about the attempted rape, and that's what she told him. She didn't have a lawyer. She didn't have an advocate. And I asked recently a judge who's been on the bench for 15 years, do you ever get training in how trauma affects testimony? The answer was no. That's just wrong.
Statistics show that 3 women are murdered every day by an intimate partner, and that women between the ages of 18 and 34 are at the greatest risk of becoming victims of domestic violence. Cheryl Kravitz got away from her abuser, but for years she lived in fear that he would find her. In 1995, she learned he had died, but to this day, she still carries the protective order she received years before as a reminder of how far she has come.
Since that time, I've been doing a lot of speaking and writing, but I also hear from women all the time who I talk with about what their options are, because there are options.
If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, these Montgomery County resources are available to you at no cost. Domestic violence and abuse can happen to anyone. The Portraits of Life is a traveling photo exhibit that honors Holocaust survivors. One of those survivors featured in the display recently spoke about his experience at Montgomery College. Manny Mandel is a survivor of the Holocaust.
And my grandparents were deported to Auschwitz in 1944.
Who doesn't hesitate at the opportunity to tell his story.
I can conclude to you that was my first experience with the Holocaust. Understand that for many, many years after the Holocaust, there was no discussion about it. In 1981-82, there were 2 major conferences, gatherings they called it, one in Israel and one here in Washington. And that began the notion of some survivor groups but the Holocaust was over, not in 1980, but 50 years before. For those 50 years, there was very, very little talk.
His latest conversation took place at the Paul Peck Gallery on the campus of Montgomery College. Mandel is featured in the Holocaust Survivors of Montgomery County, a moving art exhibit of 40 photographic portraits of survivors from the county.
As we lose these people over the years, why is it so important for you to get out there and tell this story?
I've used the phrase that says we are a diminishing resource. And we're diminishing. How can I do about it? I'm 83. Some of these people are older.
Photography sessions for the exhibit started in 2004, with the first exhibit displayed in 2005.
If you look at her expression and you hear her story, the expressions support the story. I deliberately put her on a shiny table because I like the effect of the reflection going down. It magnifies the shot.
John Goel is one of the photographers who captured the portraits, including Mandel's.
Because people can relate to pictures. And people who know nothing about it can relate to pictures. And Manny, whatever he said applies to all of us too. We have a responsibility, strongly felt, to present or preserve what we can to generations coming after us who don't have a clue about any of this.
Councilman Katz,
How are you?
do you know my friend Nessie?
I do. Actually, I have met Nessie. Yeah.
Nessie was for many years, and he still is, titularly kind of the dean of the survivors.
And what about standing in this room with all of these photos? How does that make you feel?
Well, kind of very comfortable, because I know these people, and I know their story, and I share in their history. And many of these are quite different. Some of these people were in camps, some were not, some were hiding, some were converted, some were raised as Catholics, whatever. I mean, there's nothing evil about that, except that's not how they were born.
The exhibit has traveled across the county to schools where Mandel speaks to the students about his experience. It's also been on display at Strathmore, the Glenview Mansion, and libraries across the region. It's a story, he says, that's his responsibility to share.
Well, it's not an honor in the sense that I think that people ought to know. And if I can teach them something they don't know, that's an accomplishment. The partisans were the guerrilla underground fighters who fought in forests and what. They bombed a bus. In some ways to be enormous burdens to the German high command. And in retaliation for that, everybody who made a left turn to the gate marched maybe 300 yards, 300 yards or so to the water. As we were marching in that direction, there's a police officer standing on our right who says to my father, "Mister, what are you doing here? So please will you take your group and step aside," which we did. The policeman did not know how good he was to us because he saved our lives. They were shot into the river to never be found again. After the first generation of survivors, namely us, are gone, there is no direct contact. Now, I would like to hope that our next generation will pick up on that so it's not forgotten. Not because it's been memorialized because of its impact, but because it's important to know what this world has done.
A book has been published that chronicles Manny Mandel's life, and he also volunteers at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, a survivor who uses his life story as a positive life lesson. Well, that does it for this edition of The Bottom Line. For County Cable Montgomery, I'm Susan Kennedy. Thanks for watching.
Never drive through floods. Just 1 foot of water can sweep your vehicle off the road. Turn around. Don't drown. Visit mc311.com for more info.
Deer are crepuscular. That means they're most active at dawn and dusk, especially in fall and winter. When driving, watch for eye shine by the sides of the road. Deer travel in groups. If you see one deer, there are probably more nearby. Drive slowly. Wear your seatbelt just in case you need to make a sudden stop. Stay in the center lane when driving on a multi-lane highway. Deer can be mesmerized by a car's lights. If a deer freezes up, flash your lights and tap your horn to move them along. Pay attention to caution signs. They're put in spots where deer gather. If you do hit a deer, don't panic. If someone is hurt, call emergency services. If no one is hurt, but something got damaged, call your local police. And don't forget to call your insurance company.
What do you do if you smell natural gas? A gas leak can happen if a gas pipe is damaged, if an appliance that uses gas isn't hooked up right, or if someone leaves a burner or the oven on. If you smell natural gas, don't try to find out where it's coming from. Just get out. From a safe location, call 911 and then your local gas company. If the odor is very strong or you hear something hissing, leave the area immediately and warn other people as you go. Natural gas is highly flammable. Don't light a cigarette or use your phone or anything with batteries. Don't turn light switches on or off. Don't start your car. Don't do anything that could create a spark. Washington Gas's emergency number is 703-750-1400. Evacuate first. Call next.